Hey everyone, I'm 12 News meteorologist Stephen Matregrano. We have another Beyond the Forecast here. I'm joined by 12 News meteorologist Catie McNeil, and we're talking about the summer outlook, what's in store for the long range, as well as what we're looking at in terms of also hurricane season as well. So Catie, I don't know if you want to say a few words or not, but we can jump right into it if you want.
This is exciting. Our first Beyond the Forecast together is the only duo that hasn't met yet. So exciting for a pretty positive topic, right? We're talking about the summer. We're already kind of feeling the heat here, but we do have a direct question about this from Melissa from Lincoln. The question is, what is the overall projection for the type of summer season that we can expect? Are we expected to have warmer/wetter weather than normal this summer? So I would say the quick answer to that is yes for both categories, for both temperature and precipitation outlook here.
Yeah, and that's obviously a key important piece to the summer forecast and what people want to expect for beach weather. Because if we remember last year, we had a consecutive stretch of, I believe it was like 17 weekends in a row of any kind of measurable rainfall. Of course, we don't want that to happen again, but that's Mother Nature's call, not ours. So we'll be seeing again, our outlook going forward for temperature is actually above average. So that means that we're looking at a above average chance of seeing above average temperatures, both humidity as well and also those warm temperatures. You can see in the map here that we're looking at shows that dark shade of orange. That's well above average. So we have a pretty good chance of seeing those temperatures well above average.
But something that we talked about before, because we had a similar temperature outlook for the winter, is that well above average does not necessarily mean 10, 20 degrees above. It's not usually that stark of a number. Could just be a couple degrees. But that trend, though, consistently will aid in the development of other things, especially with the ocean temps, things like that, which could then project to more precipitation.
Right, and I'll add on to that one more point is also when we have these outlooks, there also will be cooler days mixed in, like you mentioned. There's going to be cooler days in between, so it does not mean that every day is going to be scorching hot throughout the entire summer. So we want to make sure that's known with that graphic here. I want to switch now to the next graphic, which is actually the precipitation outlook, very similar here to our temperature one. We are looking at above average precipitation. So what does that mean? It means, to me at least, a lot of humidity is expected. Most likely we'll be having, again, rainy days that we typically do when it comes to summertime. We have those afternoon thunderstorms in the summertime that, will form along the sea breeze front or anything like that where, it's, you get
we saw quite a bit of that last summer as well.
Yeah, and it all lines up with the jet stream and how everything pans out. But does it mean it's going to rain every weekend? Not necessarily.
Well, and also kind of what we were saying, last summer the pattern, the timing just happened to be that we'd have a drier week and then the weekend would be a little bit wetter, but that isn't necessarily going to be the trend continuing again this summer. I mean, so far late spring, we've been seeing end of the work week, Thursday, Friday kind of being the days, and then the weekend being drier. So it's hard to say if that exact pattern will continue, but it's one of those things where it's not guaranteed, just because we're saying above average precipitation means that it's going to be on the weekend. It could be any days of the week.
Right, and actually, considering what we saw last year on the weekends, I do feel like, what are the chances that happens 2 years in a row? I feel like, hopefully not. I would like to think that.
Not very likely. I mean,
We've already had a couple
we can't.
Nice weekends too.
Already we've had warm, dry weekends. The past several days have been dry. So yes, we are tracking this week in particular already Thursday, Friday kind of being the rainier days, and the weekend not looking so bad. So it's one of those things that we can't give a definitive answer like, yes, the weekends are going to be rainy or they're not going to be. But yeah, I feel like the chances of it being the exact same pattern as what we saw last summer is pretty unlikely.
Yeah, I'd be willing to take my chances on that one. So I want to jump to our next question, which kind of ties in with our outlook for the summer, which is what causes the humidity to be so high? Is the dew point actually worse than humidity? That's from Kathleen from Charlestown. So as we all know, here in New England, we have the humidity in the summertime. We have warm oceans. We have a southerly wind typically that helps bring up some of that tropical moist air. It actually also depends on where the high pressure is located, which high pressure, as we all know, brings us nice weather. And the positioning of that is very important. We talk about Bermuda highs. If you hear about that terminology from us a lot, that is a high pressure, which is located over or near Bermuda, and the wind around that is clockwise. So if you kind of picture it on a map, it helps to kind of usher up the warmer air and the tropical air. So to me, that's what
getting these southerly, what we call like an onshore southerly flow, which is bringing that deep tropical moisture up from the Gulf of Mexico, southern Atlantic Ocean near the Gulf. which is helping to aid in that development of high dew points, which we'll kind of be talking about in a little bit, can also help for the development of thunderstorms. So depending on how we see these circulations throughout the summer will depend on how our severe weather season ends up shaping up.
And those south winds also help to bring up a sea breeze, which many people, I'm sure, like Kathleen in Charlestown probably knows. She's probably well aware that there's sea breezes all the time in the afternoon in the spring and summer. So yeah, that's pretty important. I guess we can kind of shift gears now if you want, Katie. We can kind of go towards our next graphic actually, which is, I believe, our hurricane outlook, because I know Tony and TJ touched on this in their last Beyond the Forecast, but
we did get the official outlook, which was released on June 1st as far as actual numbers. So we wanted to kind of give you guys an opportunity to see this here. So the short story of it is that it's expected to be an above average, very active hurricane season this year.
Yes, we're looking at every outlet that releases an outlook or forecast, they're showing above average numbers. You can see it on your screen right here. So the average for hurricanes, or total named storms, is 14, and NOAA is forecasting about 17 to 25. So that whole range is above what the average is. So that's kind of hinting at an above average season. Obviously, of those 8 to 13 hurricanes being hurricanes, and 4 to 7 becoming major, which is category 3 or stronger. And as we always say, it only takes one. So although we're looking at an active season, potentially doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be many landfalls.
Also, we are overdue here in southern New England. It's
been
been a long time. I think the last major one we had was Bob, I believe, in 1991.
And that was years ago. I remember when I was in my internship back in like 2015, 2016, and we were talking about how New England was still due for a hurricane. And even since then, we've been saying it every year, and it's just like, what year?
Later,
it's more about not if, but it's when. When is that going to happen?
So I think the key with that is, preparedness always is something that people around here should be aware of, especially in the coastal areas that tend to get hit harder with the storm surge, things like that. Preparing your homes, safety kits, things like that. Because with an active season, we always have to be on the lookout and be prepared that for the worst case scenario that we could get a major storm here.
And thankfully our technology, allows us to be able to kind of at least see out in the future long enough to kind of figure out where a storm is going to be forming and potentially the tracks of it, days in advance, which is very helpful. And again, looking at those numbers, I know it's probably daunting for people seeing these high numbers, but again, does not necessarily mean...
We're not trying to scare anybody.
It doesn't necessarily mean a landfall, but just be weather aware is what we're saying.
But preparedness, and also the timeline that we have not seen one here in a while, it could happen at any year.
Right.
So being prepared, having your safety plan, your safety kit, preparing your home, things like that, always important. Medications, flashlights, all the things that we try to hammer.
Looking into insurance plans and stuff too is also important. I mean, that's to me is more of when you're expecting a landfall, but never.
And we've seen a lot of coastal erosion with all the winter storms. Obviously, those weren't tropical. They were subtropical, but kind of a lot of the same patterns as far as damage goes. So a lot of those beachfront properties have been facing issues already. So now would be the time, if you're going to safeguard anything or do anything now, before we shift into that towards the later end of the summer. But something we were talking about too, which is attributing to these stats that they're putting out, is the transition into a La Nina towards the end of this summer, which I know TJ and Tony kind of already touched on this, but it is an important factor when it comes to that development of how things are changing.
Right, and combine the La Nina, which last year during the hurricane season, it was an El Nino. It's a climate pattern of ocean temperatures in the Pacific Ocean. It impacts our climate here in the Northeast. So what we're seeing is La Nina, which typically leads to an active hurricane season, is actually coinciding with the hurricane season itself. So that spells for a pretty active season. Most years that we've had a La Nina, we've had an active hurricane season. Also, the water temperatures, even locally here, they're above average, and also just the entire Atlantic is, I guess for lack of better words, is like cooking. It's just boiling water out.
And to put it in perspective, we had an unfavorable environment last summer with the El Nino, which is typically a less active season, and we still had, I don't remember the exact number, but a lot of named storms and a couple close calls here. We had Hurricane Lee. So the fact that that was in an unfavorable environment, we now are shifting into a favorable environment with those above average temperatures. So it'll definitely be interesting to see
it'll be,
how things develop.
Right, and obviously the peak for our season is later in the summer, September-ish, October. So we'll be watching that closely. But I guess we should shift gears now, maybe to our severe weather side of things.
I feel like in the immediate timeline, that will be the more impactful story, because again, hurricane season is more typically September through October, November-ish. But obviously last summer we saw our fair share of severe weather here in southern New England. We were very busy here in the weather center.
We definitely were, between flooding and we had numerous tornadoes and touchdowns and also threats too.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where the pattern is just right for us, and it's becoming a common theme across southern New England, seeing these tornadoes spin up and these flash flooding events and things like that. So definitely catches us having to be on point. And
I mean, I've grown up here my entire life, and I have to say last summer was probably the most active severe weather pattern I've seen in my life here living in Rhode Island. And it definitely, as a meteorologist, begs the question, is this going to be a consistent pattern going forward? So we have question 4. With winter not being so cold, does it give the water temp a head start in warming up? Does it give us a better chance of seeing tropical storms? Or I guess we could shift that to severe weather as well. Because here in southern New England, which is different from other areas of the country where you kind of want drier air at the surface mixing with other factors, here tropical moisture is a big aiding factor in that development.
Yeah, and so this kind of goes back to what we were talking about just a short time ago with the hurricane season stuff. This one, it actually is true, yeah. With the water temperatures already starting out at a warmer temperature, it does give us a better chance of seeing activity in just the entire Atlantic, not necessarily here in southern New England. But what that to me would say is if we did have a storm, hypothetically, approaching us, it would give it more fuel and maybe not colder waters to weaken it in time. So that's, to me, is what I would say from that question, is kind of like, it would maybe not weaken it as much as it normally would be with colder
favorable temperatures. The storms would be entering a more favorable environment even up this far north, which could aid to a stronger storm.
Yeah, it would be able to maintain its strength. Does not necessarily mean that we're going to be seeing any kind of landfall here in New England this summer. So that was question 4 from Ralph in Attleboro. Thank you for sending in your question. This one is kind of more fun, and we included it here. This question is from Gavin in Cranston. And the question is there a chance of, quote, raining frogs or, quote, tennis ball-sized hail in the foreseeable future? I can't say I've ever seen either of those.
I have not.
Yeah, I know we had reports
tennis ball-sized hail, typically they get that out in the Midwest. They're even larger than that sometimes. Here in southern New England, we typically do not see hail that large.
I believe quarter-sized hail is usually the most highest one that we would see.
Yeah, here specifically, obviously, you can't count it out completely. There is a chance with a strong enough storm, but on average, we do not see large hail like that.
It was a few weeks ago, I believe, we had a couple severe storms that were tracking through, and I believe one of the warnings was actually for golf ball size hail. And they had reports about 2-inch size hail in Narragansett, as well as somewhere in Connecticut as well. So is it possible? Yes, but it's not quite that common around here. Raining frogs, to me, we've had tons of rain.
Yes. We have not had a shortage of rain really since a year ago.
Right,
last June.
We've been seeing, tons of flash flooding and just heavy rain events. And, I guess, is there an end in sight? That's TBD, to be determined. Yeah. We still see our fair share of thunderstorm rain that brings the heavy rainfall, the flash flooding.
Well, and the severe weather season will really drive that as well. If we're seeing these severe storms popping up again with that deep tropical moisture that we were mentioning, could see some more flooding with that, because it's a lot easier to see localized higher rainfall totals in these thunderstorms, which is a little bit different than what we saw this winter with kind of these larger storms. If we are going to see flooding, I would say it would probably be from thunderstorms in the coming next couple months.
And I want to shift to our next graphic, by the way, which is also along the lines of severe weather, so that we can advance it here. And this is lightning safety. So this is very important in the summertime. As you know, Catie, many people are at the beach, or they're on the boat, or they're playing golf or baseball, whatever it might be outside,
Yes.
barbecues,
Yeah.
all that
A
stuff.
lot of people are outdoors in the next couple months. We have 4th of July coming up in less than a month now. So it does beg the question, kind of what do you do in this situation, especially if you're outdoors? So the main thing is tall objects are kind of a beacon for lightning.
Right.
Trees, telephone poles, any larger, taller object you do not want to be near.
Right, and you might think, being under a tree is safe because you're kind of protected, but in reality, you're actually not. You're in a spot where you're more likely to potentially be struck or have, the tree struck and the branch falls or something like that. So the best advice I would say is either get indoors, get inside your car, or if you are caught out in like the wide open, find like a ditch or just find any low point on the ground that you can kind of like, you want to stay as close to the ground as you can.
If you're, I think that's one thing that we talk about too, is if you don't have anywhere to go, getting as low to the ground as possible. Because sometimes you could be in an area you don't have your car accessible, and you're in an open field. Where do I go? Yeah, try to get as close to the ground as possible. If you can get to your vehicle, it's actually one of the safest spots you can go when there's lightning.
Avoid water. Let's just say that.
Yes,
Yeah, get out of the water. No pool, no beaches. Get away from the water. And again, if you hear thunder, that's when you want to go inside, because if you hear thunder, that means lightning can strike you. Obviously, if you see lightning, you want to make sure you're not outside. So just some things to keep in mind for the when you're having a beach day or something.
I think a misconception too is how far away lightning can actually travel.
Right.
Like, even if it seems like the thunder's far away, that does not mean the lightning can't still strike you.
You can get struck from miles away. So it's important to be mindful of that, especially during the summer months when a lot of people are outside and out and about. So our next question, this is a fun one, and it's a nice personal one, is what is your favorite type of weather? Is the wilder the weather, the better? That's from April in Barrington. So I don't know, Katie, if you want to go first with that.
Yeah, so actually I would say severe weather, the season that we're entering, is definitely my favorite. It can be, from the working side of things, it can be very stressful because obviously we want to get information out to the public, keep everybody safe. But it can be a lot of fun. I've been storm chasing in the past. Severe weather to me is a really kind of exhilarating experience to go through. But obviously, as we were mentioning, there's a lot of safety factors as well. So being on TV, you want to make sure that we're keeping the public safe while also kind of being a little bit nerdy on our end.
Yeah, I feel like anytime we have that severe weather, it's a fun. It kind of gets you going, and it's why we do it. For me, my favorite type of weather is actually tropical weather. I have, when I first got here to WPRI, I remember I was outside in Isaias and the other storms that tracked on through, and that was like, for the lack of better words, it was a weaker storm. It was a tropical storm.
Yeah.
It wasn't really a full-blown hurricane. I'm not wishing for a big hurricane by any means, but I would like to be like in a hurricane and tracking that. And
I feel like as a little kid, we always have these dreams, I'm going to be out in the field tracking whether it's winter weather or hurricanes. So it's definitely something, obviously we don't want the damage and destruction, but kind of on the nerdy meteorologist side of things, it is a lot of fun to experience weather like that.
It was fun also waking up on a school day, checking the bottom of the TV scroll to see if your school was canceled because of a snow day. That was always fun too. I like that part.
Yeah. So I think we have one final graphic we wanted to show, kind of relating back to the severe weather stuff, also hurricane stuff as well, which is applicable. Which is, what is a watch versus a warning? And I know we were talking about this a lot last summer because we would get, for example, a tornado watch across our area, and people were like, does that mean there's a tornado coming?
Right.
No. So this is kind of a fun way to show it. But a watch means that the ingredients are there, that the conditions are appropriate, that things could develop, but it doesn't mean anything's happening yet. Whereas a warning means it's an active situation. If a warning is issued for your town, you should get to your safe place immediately.
Right, and this is a nice way to break it down. Is again, a watch is things that are things are coming together to potentially have it happening, but a warning is happening. That's when you take shelter and things like that. And that again goes for any kind of watch and warning, whether it's a flood watch or a severe thunderstorm watch or any kind of snow event. Something to keep in mind, and this is a fun way to kind of remember, okay,
just because there's a watch, it doesn't mean that there's a tornado on the ground.
Right.
Once you get the warning, that's a more serious situation that you want to take shelter and, again, get to that safe place. And we always say, never take a warning lightly. Even if we get warnings a lot sometimes. Last summer we were seeing them a lot. Doesn't necessarily mean a tornado will happen just in that specific scenario, but you should never say, oh, well, I don't see it or nothing seems to be changing. Should I still take cover? Yes, you should. If there's a warning in place, that should always be taken seriously.
Exactly.
Because you never know. So.
And we have one more question if we have enough time for it, the end of ours related question here. This actually goes back to what we said in the beginning of this Beyond the Forecast, is with all the rain that we saw on Saturdays last summer, do we plan on seeing a similar trend this year? I guess in short is we can't control that, of course, as everyone probably knows.
So it's a little soon to tell for the entire summer outlook. Obviously, we have model data and stuff that we use, which helps us do these extended outlooks, which years and years ago, we couldn't do that at all.
Right. Yes.
So we kind of know the overall pattern that we're expecting, which is above average, but as far as what that means and when it's going to be is still uncertain.
Right, and we can only hope that the pattern sets up on the weekdays for the rain, so that the weekend gets some nice, beach and boating days in there. So hopefully, the summer brings us a better fortune than we had last year, because that was, I remember when you were covering with us too, and we were just like seeing every weekend.
Yes.
It was like rain,
heavy
rain.
And flooding events as well. So
hopefully we're past that, and that was a last year thing.
So I'm definitely looking forward to a nice summer. We've already been seeing some great weather the past couple of weekends, so hopefully we can continue that trend for the next couple months.
Yes, and I think with that has been our latest Beyond the Forecast. Thank you all for tuning in. We have another one coming up next month, so make sure you check back for that on WPRI.com.